When you look at custody, security, and kind of the future of where crypto is going, especially in traditional finance and also within the banking sector, among other companies that are starting to really integrate into Web3 and kind of the future of digital payments, there's one company that always comes to the forefront when you're thinking about that, and that is a company called Fireblocks. Today we're going to break that down. My name is Paul Barron. Welcome back into TechPath. Joining me today is Goldi, who's the VP of Payments over at Fireblocks. So, Goldi, great to have you on the show today.
Hi, Paul. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, good deal. So let's get into it, Goldi, a little bit about Fireblocks in general, because we have people who do understand what Fireblocks does, but there's a lot of people that are entering into the crypto space for the first time. They hear this name all the time, but they don't really understand the full function of what Fireblocks does. Give us a rundown on what you guys are up to.
Yeah, so I guess there's many different levels on how to explain this. Very technical, non-technical at all. I guess the simplest way to explain what Fireblocks is that we're now going to live, hopefully very, very soon, but already started live in a world of digital assets. And the same way that today you need a place to keep your funds safe, you're using maybe a bank, maybe a different service, and those banks are using safes to keep your money safe. What we're creating are, let's call that digital safes, right?
Yeah.
I'm not sure all the banks are actually using safes for real, but those that do that. So we're creating those digital safes, and those digital safes are there to help whoever's using them, whether that is really a bank, whether that's a payments company, whether that is a crypto trading company, to make sure that their assets are secured as they want to use those for the various use cases, but also not only when they are in storage, but also when they want to transfer those. So if you would go back, 10, 12 years when all of this started, when you wanted to just send someone crypto, it was, send someone a Bitcoin, you would actually have to ask for their address, and maybe there'll be a QR code, maybe not. You'll have to copy paste that address. You would be super scared. You would feel like you're being scammed 5 times before you actually send that Bitcoin. And as the market evolved and larger companies became present here and started offering their services, they were still using those very long addresses of wallets that they had to copy paste. They were afraid of hacks, etc. Fireblocks essentially came in back in 2018 and literally solved that huge pain and huge operational lift for companies and that security panic that they had. And now I believe that, obviously not to toot our own horn, but I think we're the market leader, or let's say this, one of the 3-4 leaders in this space of allowing businesses to run digital assets securely, both storing that and making sure that money on the move is secured as well.
Yeah. Okay. So I think that's a good explanation too. I think for people maybe for the first time looking at crypto, and that is a valid concern even to today. I get a chance to talk with a lot of people at different not only events, but kind of these mixers in these educational forums where people who are getting into crypto for the first time, that's usually the first question. Is it safe? Is it secure? I hear all of these stories. And even to today, here in 2022, for high net worth individuals, that's still a major concern. So they obviously look to the traditional ecosystems that are out there for security and kind of that comfy feeling. So I definitely understand where you guys have come from in terms of your success ratios here with kind of the growth. Let's talk a little bit about, first of all, when we look at digital payments, because there's been so much news here recently around digital payment adoption, what that might look like in the future. And yet at the same time, we don't necessarily see a clear-cut path by any one real company yet that has really opened up digital payments. And let me kind of phrase that in a second. If you just look at an e-commerce situation or solution, even today, Coinbase Commerce, someone like a BitPay, still struggling with being able to just get a commerce and a merchant account up. So all of that from a digital payments aspect, much less the security and custody side of this, really represent some big challenges. When you guys look at that from the digital payments ecosystem, how would Fireblocks be involved in that ecosystem to really help this kind of grow into the next level?
Right. So that's actually a great question, and I think it's important to take a minute and do a bit of zoom out about payments in general, right? Because payments has been around since forever, right? We've been exchanging value since forever, humankind, and basically what we have today in payments are a lot of different systems that most of them were designed and built in the 60s, 70s, and those systems allow us, as people to transfer funds, whether locally in our own country or cross-border between countries. They allow us to pay to different merchants online, and everything feels amazing to us, but it's really not that amazing at the back end of that. So
Right.
I'll give you an example. I'll give you an analogy. You buy a house, and it's not a super new house. It's an old house, and you renovate it, and 10 years go by, you renovate it again, and then 10 years go by, renovate it again. But eventually that house, that plumbing, that infrastructure of that house, it's
Mm-hmm.
just too old. And this is
Yeah.
what's happening today in the world of payments. We still
Right.
have mainframes running payments globally. And I think that people need to understand that blockchain payments is not about when will you and I will pay with Bitcoin or Ethereum or any other shitcoin for that matter, pardon my language. It's really about how the infrastructure of money worldwide is slowly being evolved. Because
Right.
if we talk about it, for real. It's not like there's millions of people standing in line asking, "Hey, where can I pay with this stable coin
Mm-hmm.
or with this Bitcoin?" And it's not going to happen tomorrow or the year after as well. But what we do think is important in Fireblocks is we think it's important for payment companies and infrastructure companies to understand that they can now upgrade their infrastructure to one that includes blockchain, because that would
Right.
allow them to essentially be connected to any other country, corporate, or whatever that's running the same infrastructure. And when that happens, right, when your bank, your commercial bank, your retail bank will run those systems, then your financials will actually run on digital assets, and you will actually use a digital currency whether you're aware of that or not. You'll still be using your Chase app or your Venmo to pay, but actually behind the scenes it will be a digital asset, and that will be the moment when we will know that this evolution has already happened. And the same way that you don't know you're using TCP/IP or anything else on the internet, you're just typing Paul Barron network, enter in Google, go to the website, amazing, it
Sure.
all works, right? Same thing.
Yeah, I was looking just at your website here, just on the platform side, just to give people a framework of everything that you guys do with network, security, the DeFi component, the MPC, the wallet as a service, which I think is going to be huge as we see more wallet integration, obviously AML, the anti-money laundering compliance there. And then I want to explore, not yet, but I want to get into Web3, because that's something that a lot of our audience really are looking to going down the track. So you guys have your tool sets are really set in stone, in the sense of there's a good framework here for companies who are looking to explore this to move to that next level. Here's a question I have for you, is that the more I see commerce companies, even for our own business, we're a media company, we are constantly, we have member programs, all these different things where we interface with payments constantly. And one of the biggest challenges is all of these, what I consider very advanced Web 2 companies that are not enabled yet to be able to simply just engage in a blockchain payment. How long before you think we'll see that really happen? Outside of companies like a PayPal or someone like that, but you've got a lot of accounting services, CRM services, web hosting, all these different platforms that really, most of the time, they're just plugging in a PayPal or a Stripe connection, and that's kind of it. What's the opportunity there going forward?
So I think the opportunity is obviously huge because payments is everywhere, right? It's us as
Right.
individuals paying, it's businesses paying. What we see really happening today is that businesses are adopting this, but not necessarily for their payment lines with consumers. They're using this mostly for settlement, for example. I'll give
Right.
you a real use case. We have as a client checkout.com or WorldPay, right? Both are two of the largest processors in the world. And they've implemented Fireblocks so they could settle with their merchants in real time over stablecoins, meaning that if you go to an exchange that they service, that they process credit cards for, someone wants to come and buy $100 worth of Bitcoin, great. The processor, WorldPay or Checkout, they will immediately process that transaction, and that exchange will then send you $100 worth of Bitcoin. But that exchange would only get those $100 once WorldPay or Checkout will send them a fiat transfer, right? That will take a day, 2 days, 3 days, depending if it's a long weekend, whatever. Right now, what we allow them to do is we allow them to, once that transaction is authorized, immediately they can send USDC, a stable coin, a dollar-pegged digital currency, directly to that merchant's account. And from a cash flow perspective, that merchant has now gained, an extra day or an extra 2 days, 3 days. So I think merchants are actually the ones who are adopting this for the, back-end financial infrastructure that they use, and payment companies as well. When will we see commercial usage in terms of for e-commerce? I think we're still, we still have a way to go, and it really depends the enablers here. And there's a lot of enablers that needs to happen. The number one enabler, fortunately and unfortunately, is regulation, right?
Yeah.
I'll give you the perfect example. In Brazil, the government has put in a framework for how to create a stable coin, or a Brazilian real pegged stable coin. So now more than 15 companies are issuing stable coins, and there is literally like hundreds of thousands of merchants are now accepting this. Why? Because every large Venmo-like company now supports these stable coins. In the US, because whether in the US, regulations take more time, or whether it's because we have those great payment methods at the moment, right? You're using Apple Pay or Google Pay. You're not missing something. In Brazil, by the way, about 12 months ago, up until 12 months ago, if you wanted to buy something on Amazon, you would buy it on Amazon. You would get a small slip. You would go to like a 7-Eleven. You would pay with that slip. They would scan that and tell Amazon, the person just paid, send them the product. Right. So we don't have that problem in most Western countries, right? So I guess regulation maybe is not as urgent for us to adopt in the US, in the UK, and other places. That's number one. Number two, which I think you and I talked about this before, is on-chain identity. One of the real problems of this space is that it's still very anonymized. And from the regulator's point of view, which they control the majority of, obviously, of funds moving around the world, anonymized transactions are a challenge, because anti-money laundering laws are trying to prevent all sorts of use cases where people do funky stuff, right? So I guess on-chain is another great enabler for that hopefully will happen soon.
Yeah, I think the security layer is one that obviously you guys are solving on the enterprise side, obviously with custody, et cetera. And I think that is going to obviously lay down the framework of how we see payments, much like what you've talked about. And I do agree with you. I think it's just a matter of time before we start to see that on the retail front. The merchant side, I think those are obvious benefits around that. When you look at the potential here, though, and both from a regulatory environment, I had a chance to listen in to Jeremy Allaire, who is the CEO of Circle, and Kevin, Mr. Wonderful, talking about, they were at their conference, and they were really kind of diving into the regulatory component of USDC and what that might look like. Obviously, within the United States, most likely going to be one of the leaders in that area. When we see regulation happen on stablecoins, how quickly from that point, from the time that we see regulation occur, or at least the definition that most likely it's going to go through, How long do you think it would be before that where we start seeing real adoption curves taking off in aspects, especially from the merchant side of things, where we can use a stable coin as a utility transport for moving US dollars?
Right. So I think, obviously regulation is something that's really jurisdiction linked, right?
Yeah.
So, but
Yeah.
but Europe is moving forward faster than most
Mm-hmm.
countries right now. They have this regulation called MiCA, where they
Yep.
actually carved out, specifically what can you and what can't you do with stable coins, how should you issue those, and that's super helpful. In the US, there are working groups. I think that one of the things that really helped expedite this, not only in the US but worldwide, was the Libra/DM project that
Right. Mm-hmm.
Facebook originally initiated. Obviously, that project never saw the light of day, but it had a huge impact on regulators and how they think. And I think Facebook spent a lot of time educating regulators worldwide to make sure that project would see the light of day. It is what it is. And if you're asking me when will we see that first, first usage of real usage of stable coins by consumers paying to merchants, I think it would only happen, I would say probably like 5, 6, 7 years from now, because what we need to happen, and it's sort of this stack that needs to be built. Regulation needs to give them the green light to create stable coins. That we're almost there. We're really almost there. You're going to hear in the next 12 months, you're going to hear amazing things in the
Yep.
US banking industry. I promise you, because we're working on a lot of those. And after that, what we need is those banks, fintechs, other payment companies to start implementing this. That will take another year. And then you need to start, making sure that every citizen in the US or other Western society actually has those apps, that has that money. That would take a bit more time. So I'm thinking realistically, 3 to 5 years is minimum. But what's happening now, I'll just reiterate that from before. What's happening now is that the back-end infrastructure of money is already moving to digital assets. I
Yeah.
think consumers surprisingly will see that later than the business world.
Let's get into it today. I do want to thank our sponsor. That's Gala Games. Gala Games, of course, is rolling out Spider Tanks. I believe it's the end of October. So if you guys are looking and understanding how to get into blockchain gaming, the first stop I would always recommend is jump into Gala Games. All you have to do is just go to app.gala.games. You'll find a whole array of different projects that they are rolling out in the gaming sector. So make sure and check them out. We'll use a link below in our description so you can find your way over there and use our link. Kind of helps us out. Yeah, I was looking at the story over here from the block. BNY Mellon launched their crypto offering, obviously backs their innovation collaboration toward both custody and aspects like that. How do you see, and you just alluded to the fact that in the next 12 months we would see some really ramped up movement from the banking industry, which I think obviously will bring some big movement within crypto adoption, because the general public is going to feel much more secure about it, all those kind of things. And to your point, the groundwork and a lot of the the rails, so to speak, that run the payment systems out there are now being laid by companies like Fireblocks. So I think that is a really critical component in being able to transition our societies into this move. So do you feel like it's maybe a decade away before we still see real mass adoption? Or you mentioned 5 to 7 years. That's a lot earlier than I would have anticipated. Do you feel like we are that close, or do you think maybe we're going to stretch this out a little bit further?
Look, I hope it will be 5 to 7 years. I've been in this space for probably 6, 7 years by now. Let's say 6 years, and we've been waiting for the large financial institutions to get in. I think that finally in 2021, late 2021, early 2022, we started seeing the wave of them really coming in. And I think Bank of New York Mellon, which you just pointed out to, is a really important data point, because
Yes.
that is obviously the largest custodial bank in the world. The fact that they are willing to host digital assets and give other banks that are hosting funds with BNY Mellon to host digital assets with them as well. I think we will see, a slew of banks coming in. We already, like I said, we know of, let's say, a lot of banks, double-digit number of banks that are also doing moves in the right direction, whether that's custody, whether that is, creating their own digital currencies to be used, first within the bank and then hopefully externally as well. So I think once those banks will feel more comfortable, it will slowly proliferate to other banks, slowly retail banks, and then you'll see consumers. Now, I want to say something, because I feel I said banks like 150 times during this conversation, which is super strange for someone coming from crypto, right? My t-shirt says zero to crypto.
Yeah.
I just want to clarify maybe a few things. One, the fact that I said banks so many times doesn't mean that I don't believe that crypto is a way for decentralizing, a lot of intermediaries, or that the way we should be handling our finances should be more blockchain-like than, let's say, centralized-like, right? But that being said, I'm also not a Bitcoin maximalist. I don't think we should have a full anarchy in this world so that everyone would use crypto. But I think of myself as a realist. Like the way that technology evolves and humanity evolves is in small steps, really. Even though that as a tech person, I really want to see this like tomorrow. It evolves in small steps, and there are different enablers. And right now in the financial world, banks are the enabler of the world, and
Right.
we need to play with them, and we need to make sure that they actually implement those systems. And to my surprise, in 2022, I saw more banks running towards digital assets, whether it's Fireblocks or not, it doesn't matter, than ever before. So I think they're getting that message that it's it's an extinction level event, what's happening right now over the next 20 years, and they need to start preparing for that.
Okay, so there, with that framework, you've got obviously the traditional banks that have started to kind of move in this direction. I think the writing's on the wall for them. Then you have a lot of companies that are really in the early stage development, to a certain extent, could be the new Venmos, the new PayPals of the future. Then you have companies like maybe, say, a Revolut, who is more of a neobank. We'll see a lot more integrations into digital aspects worldwide around companies and projects like that. Do you think that layer of banking could be maybe the next generation of banking for what we're seeing, especially in the millennial and the Gen Z populations around the globe, because they don't seem to be attaching to the traditional banks, at least the ones I talk to, the polls we do, the research we do. They really are kind of either going toward crypto full in on decentralized, or they're going in toward this neo and more digital bank approach that's being brought to the market. Where do you think that breakout is going to occur?
Yeah, that's really interesting. And being sort of a boomer myself, I guess, I struggle to understand a lot of things that are happening in the, let's say, in the choices that other people do that are younger than I. But obviously, the new banks of the world, whether those are Revolut in Europe or Nubank in Brazil, they're definitely taking over the world. They're doing this because of a better experience, easier access, just more friendly interface. Everything just moves faster. Someone just showed me a few days ago that YouTube has shorted their short clip section from 15 seconds. It's now 7 seconds, and I'm like, how can you even consume anything in 7 seconds? But again, this is, people want this as fast as they could, even their banking services, right? But I guess the truth is that and this is what they're saying about new banks, is this just lipstick on a pig, right? Like, the truth is that those new banks usually have this hyper growth period where they can be very light on regulation because they don't have a lot of users. They're not heavy on assets under management.
Exactly.
And they're actually using a bank underneath, right? Their licenses, they're actually not a licensed entity. And then they become big. right? I think that happened to Revolut to some extent. I think they actually did manage to, to turn that corner, but they became so big, then they had to become their own bank. They had to take their own
Right.
licenses, and that a lot of those companies get stopped at that specific point because they need to grow up in a way, and they
Yeah.
find it hard. But I think that to our, to the topic of this discussion, I think that crypto is a huge growth driver for those apps. You can see that once Nubank in Brazil, I'm sorry to go back to Brazil all the time. Really, it's just it's just fascinating what's happening over there. This was like a totally different economy several years ago. Um,
Yes.
what happened in Brazil is that when Nubank and PicPay, two of the largest fintech apps
Hmm.
that probably most people have never heard of, when they introduced crypto, suddenly more than 55% of the population within, I think, something like 9 months had crypto. So, and it doesn't matter if it's for trading or just to get yourself familiarized with this new asset. It's amazing that their audience is adopting this at the speed of light, right?
Yeah, it is. I mean, we've seen a variety of banks that have tried to go in that direction. There was one company out there called GoBank that has tried to move in this direction. They have in reality failed because I think they've started. We did a big banking study, and I've been researching this quite a bit. And good examples are the Revolut success story versus some of the stories that have not been successful. Back to your point, where they're riding on top of other banking infrastructure before they get enough customers to really kind of figure out their way. But I think what's happening right now is there was an early run on the digital banks prior to crypto really taking off in 2021, because I feel like that's when we started to see really mass adoption to a certain extent, at least here in the US. And they weren't ready.
Mm-hmm.
They weren't ready to make that switch, be able to do something that's crypto friendly. You now have Robinhood that is almost acting like a bank, paying 3% on gold members, dropping just cash in their trading accounts, and then providing debit card services and things of that nature. It's not going to be very long before I think they step over into that Revolut style competition with a trading desk. Ally Bank, same thing. They've been trying to get more trading and investing with what they've done, mostly a digital bank. So I definitely agree with you of where this is going. It's going to be interesting. The landscape is getting very, very competitive. So it's going to be intriguing to watch for sure. All right, so Goldi, let's go into a little bit about the roadmap for Fireblocks. But when you look at Web3, DeFi, the potential there is pretty dynamic, but also at the same time, a lot of people wading into those waters still think they are a little bit risky. Talk to me about what your plans are in Web3 and DeFi.
Right. Great question. Because roadmap for a crypto security company is very challenging, right? We now have about 1,600 clients. We've crossed the 100 million ARR mark, and that means that we have clients from a very diversified set of industries. Like you said, it's the Web3s, it's DeFi, crypto natives, it's now bank, fintechs, payment companies, etc. I think our focus on for the next, let's call that 6 to 12, maybe 18 months is for us, it's very clear what's our number one goal is to make sure that we're still the most secured platform, and that we make sure that our clients feel as secure as possible with their digital assets, because the world of of security, of hackers, that never stops, right? If you're in
Right.
Web3, if you're in DeFi, every other day you see another hack that that stole a few millions, right? So if you're asking our roadmap, the number one core thing on our roadmap is just continue to invest heavily in our security and make sure everything is in place. The other thing, and to your question, Web3 and DeFi, it's a very complicated world. And also for DeFi companies, I wouldn't say that specifically in Web3 that everyone knows what they're building right now.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone has a lot of ideas. Everyone has a lot of thoughts. You have Web2 companies trying to get into Web3. They're playing with this a bit. You have like new startups that say, you know what, I'm going to build Twitter for Web3 where I don't have the data of the users and the user owns their own data. Great.
Right.
Our job for Web3 companies, just to be focused on that for a second, is just to make sure we're giving them the right tools, right? Giving them the right infrastructure so they could build on top of our APIs. Those companies will probably never use our interface per se. They will
Right.
probably
Right.
just want an API to create some sort of an NFT marketplace, or they would want to use our, secure signing APIs. They would want to use our smart transfer API. So for us in Web3, it's really just make sure that we make everything accessible for the developer and make sure that all of the capabilities that Fireblocks for enterprise are also enabled for the Fireblocks for the Web3 companies, whether those are startup or Web2 companies coming in. The other part of the roadmap is, there's definitely the DeFi, which is within the crypto native part, which is how do we allow traditional investors or traditional crypto traders and financial institutions who were very scared of DeFi. How do we allow them to trade those assets and to participate in those tokens, whether those are utility tokens that are created by great projects? How do we allow them to participate in that in a very secure manner? And again, the emphasis here is always security. How do we allow them to connect their wallet without the fear of getting hacked, right? So I guess our focus for DeFi is just to make sure that, again, we give the tools for the traders to trade that within that space, within the DeFi space, more securely. Now, the other two important things that I can talk about in our roadmap, one of them is obviously payments. I'm super biased here as the VP of payments. Fireblocks acquired a payments company 9 months ago, and that company has been implemented into Fireblocks, and now there's a new set of tools specifically for payment companies, whether those are the WorldPays, checkout, like the PSPs of the world, or the fintechs of the world who are doing payments. So payments is a very big part of our roadmap. And the last part is, we call that TradFi, traditional finance, right? Mm-hmm. That's how it's called right now in the industry. It's basically how you take a financial institution and you slowly take them into this space with the right set of governance tools, of policies, of everything they're used to from their normal world, but in digital assets that is not just a Wild West wallet that you could do whatever you want or your employees could do whatever they want, right? So those are, I would say, like the 4 focus areas, really, like making sure that crypto traders can do DeFi correctly and get into that space safely. Number 2 is make sure we're building the right tools for the Web3 developers, because it's the developers that are driving that wave of innovation right now. Number 3 is highly focused on payment and the payment tools. And number 4, again, TradFi.
Okay, so I think one, that's a good, I think obviously the big milestones of the industry right now that are really trying to be achieved in terms of new project development, a lot of news around everything, whether you look at Web3 and where that future might end. You guys get a chance to see all of these companies who are looking for infrastructure, whether they're a startup or a mature company or someone that's brand new coming over from the Web2 space trying to do a Web3 project. Is there any trend that you're watching right now that you think, based on what you're seeing in navigating the markets, that seems to be holding around where the future may go? And we'll just stay with NFTs for a second. A lot of pressure on the NFTs. SEC just filed against Bored Ape Yacht Club, Yuga Labs here in Miami. Likelihood we're going to see some regulation pressure there. Around that, it's probably going to put a lot of innovation pressure on companies, hence whether we'll see more growth in that sector and to what level. Could go both ways. So is there an area that you guys are looking at saying this is really kind of an area that we think is going to start excelling?
Well, I tell you what we see is picking up, right? Right now, what we see is that every Web2 company, whether they held any financial balance for their consumers or not, they now want to be able to hold digital asset balance for their consumers. And again, it doesn't matter if it's video companies, music companies, gaming
Right.
companies, whatever, any Web2 company that we talk to now say, we want to have a component that holds a balance of either cryptocurrencies or tokens of sorts such as NFTs for them, right? Some
Yeah.
go even the extra mile and say, we want to have this studio of creating NFTs and every user on our platform to attach their own NFT. But I think the important thing is that those companies understand, and I hope most of them understand, this is what we're getting, is they understand they need to connect to something, and they need someone else in a way to manage the user's journey. Because
Yeah.
while they can eventually present the balance or the gallery of the NFT, whatever, they still want a capable entity at the back end of that, either giving customer support or giving technical support, obviously. And I think that while right now, if I have to characterize it, we're very much at the exploration stage of those Web2 companies. You see a lot of headlines, right? Have you actually seen a lot of products? Not
No.
yet, right? But but I guess really, again, those are huge companies. It takes time.
Yeah.
So just
Yeah.
I would say that within probably 9 to 12 months, you would see some of those Fortune 500 names actually issuing the first products.
Well, I would agree with you there because, from our side of things, I do a little bit of consulting, and I've worked with Fortune 500 companies in everything from digital to integration on their enterprise side, from their technology stacks before, and that's my background. And I've been getting more requests here recently over really about the last 3 months, where a lot of companies that I would have never thought would be moving into digital assets and crypto are asking that Web3 question now for the first time. So it actually surprises me on the companies that are starting to wade into the waters here. So it'll be interesting to see how this plays out, for sure. Goldi, it's been great having you on today. I love what you guys are doing at Fireblocks. We always see you guys come up with many of our partners. So we thought it was a good thing to get you guys on and kind of give a rundown of what's happening, but appreciate you stopping in today.
Thank you so much. Loved every minute of it. Hope to see you again.
All right, take care. All right, you guys are tuned in over on the podcast side of things. Now, these kind of videos that we do, and whether you're catching the audio tracks here over on Spotify or iTunes, this is one of those that gets you into the framework of education around not only blockchain, but really the future of payments, the future of banking, the future of your own investments. So it's very important to understand how, maybe not necessarily how this stuff works, but more importantly, how this affects you. So this is a very, very interesting part of the industry right now, and that is because we are in such early stages. If you guys are watching our video here on YouTube or catching a podcast, you're one of those people that are catching this market at its early state, which obviously is going to be great benefits to you and your family. So make sure and stay tuned. If you guys have a need for more education, one of the best things to do is like this video and just subscribe to the channel, or jump into our Diamond Circle. It's our free newsletter. We do a lot of member-only content there. You can just click the link below and find that. If you guys want to reach me, it is out there on Twitter @Paul Barron. We'll catch you next time right here on TechPath.